There is a piece of the Y chromosome that should not be as common as it is. It turns up in men on the Pacific coast of Asia. It turns up again 4,000 kilometers west, near the shore of the Caspian Sea.
Mongolia,
Kazakhstan, northeastern China, Uzbekistan. 16 separate populations scattered across a belt of the earth wide enough to hold a continent. Across that whole span, roughly 1 man in 12 carries it. That is not how a bloodline normally behaves. A lineage spread that wide is almost always ancient. It seeps outward over tens of thousands of years until it has blurred into the background of an entire landmass. Everybody has a little of it. Nobody has a lot. This one has not blurred. Every man who carries it is very nearly a copy of every other man who carries it, which means it did not seep. It went off. One family's sons and their sons' sons covering a third of Asia in a few dozen generations. Something that violent usually leaves a name behind it. A dynasty, a capital, a man. This one arrived without one. And when the geneticists sorted their samples to find where the lineage ran thickest, the trail did not lead to a throne or a step or a tomb. It led to a system of valleys in the mountains at the center of Afghanistan, and to a people living in them who have spent most of their recorded history being told they do not belong there. The Hazara sits in the central highlands wrapped around the Khoi Baba range, where it breaks off the western end of the Hindu Kush. Peaks in the ranges around it run to 16 and 17,000 feet. The highest Shah Fuladi stands at 5,048 meters. It is a hard place to live and an easy place to be forgotten in. Snow closes it from November into March, sometimes April. In January, the temperature can drop below -30. What grows there grows in narrow irrigated terraces fed by snowmelt, wheat, barley, and in the last 15 years or so, potatoes, which have become the crop that keeps Bamiyan fed. Sheep and goats go up to the high pasture in summer and come down to eat crop stubble in winter. The people of these valleys are the Hazara. They are Shia, mostly Twelver, with a substantial Ismaili minority in a country that is overwhelmingly Sunni. They speak a dialect the rest of Afghanistan can hear as different the moment it is spoken. And their faces in a region where this is noticed constantly and rarely kindly do not look like the faces of the peoples around them. Nobody agrees how many of them there are. Afghanistan has not completed a full national census since 1979, and estimates of the Hazara share of the population range from about 1 in 10 to about 1 in 5. A more recent counting effort left ethnicity off the forms entirely on the grounds that asking was too dangerous. That is the population where a Y chromosome lineage found across a third of Asia turns up at a density seen nowhere else nearby. In the study that first described it, the Hazara sample stood out from every other group tested in Pakistan. A large proportion of the men carried it, and it was, in the author's words, not otherwise seen there at all. The pattern mattered because of its shape on the page. When geneticists compare Y chromosomes, they are comparing a set of repeating stutters in the sequence, short segments that gain and lose copies at a slow, roughly clock-like rate. 2 men who share a recent ancestor will match on almost all of them. 2 men whose lines split a long time ago will have drifted apart. Plot enough men and the relationships take a shape. An old, slowly spread lineage looks like a bush. Branches everywhere, no center because there has been time for every line to wander. This one looked like a star. A dense core of identical or near-identical profiles with short spokes radiating out. It is the signature of a lineage that expanded so fast and so recently that mutation has barely had time to mark the difference between one man's descendants and another's. The researchers called it plainly the star cluster. Then they dated it. 2 different statistical methods run against the amount of drift that had accumulated. One returned roughly 1,000 years with a confidence range of about 700 to 1,300. The other returned about 860, ranging from 590 to 1,300. A lineage that exploded across Asia from a source somewhere in Mongolia, roughly 1,000 years ago. The paper was published in 2003. It carried the title The Genetic Legacy of the Mongols. And anyone reading it could do the arithmetic. Here is the part of this story that usually gets left out. The lineage did not name itself. The dating narrowed it to a window and a region, and a window and a region are not a name. Plenty of men were alive in Mongolia 1,000 years ago. Nothing in a Y chromosome says which one of them this is. What closed the gap was not a laboratory. It was the Hazara, because the Hazara already knew what they were. They had said so for as long as anyone had been asking. Many of them held and hold that they descend in the direct male line from the armies of Genghis Khan, and this was not a vague folk memory. A genealogy documenting those links had been assembled from Hazara oral history and published by the scholar Syed Asghar Mousavi in 1998, 5 years before the genetics landed. So the researchers had in one hand a lineage roughly 1,000 years old radiating out of Mongolia, and in the other hand, a people carrying it at a density seen nowhere else around them, who had been saying whose it was the whole time. They wrote it down carefully. A large proportion of the Hazara profiles do indeed lie in the star cluster, which is not otherwise seen in Pakistan, thus supporting their oral tradition and suggesting that Genghis Khan carried the star cluster haplotype. Read that sentence again, because the logic runs the opposite direction to the way this story is usually told. The DNA did not tell the Hazara who they were. The Hazara told the DNA. Once the name was attached, it traveled further and faster than the paper ever did. What the study actually said was measured. Roughly 8% of men in that 16 population belt carried the lineage, which worked out to around 0.5% of the world's men. What the world heard was a number nobody in the paper had written: 16 million descendants of Genghis Khan walking around today. That figure is an arithmetic extrapolation from the 0.5% done outside the study. It is not a finding. And there is a harder limit underneath it, which almost never gets said out loud. No one has ever recovered DNA from Genghis Khan. There is no verified grave. There is no sample. There is no sequence to compare anything to. The attribution in 2003 was never a match between a living man and a dead one. It could not have been. It was an inference, the right approximate age, the right approximate place, an extraordinary expansion that demanded an extraordinary explanation, and a people whose own genealogy supplied the candidate. That is a reasonable inference. It is not a measurement. And the difference between those two things is where this story turns. Before it turns, there is a question worth stopping on, because the answer is the reason we have the data at all. The Hazara in that landmark study were not sampled in the Hazarajat. They were sampled in Pakistan. Why a people from the Central Highlands of Afghanistan were available to a Pakistani genetic survey in numbers is not a scientific question. It is a historical one, and it is ugly. In the early 1890s, the Amir Abdur Rahman Khan moved to bring the semi-autonomous Hazarajat under the direct control of the Afghan state. The campaign was declared a jihad justified by the Hazaras' Shia faith and their refusal to submit to taxation. What followed was mass killing, mass enslavement, and the confiscation of Hazara land, which was handed to Pashtun and loyalist settlers. How many died is genuinely disputed, and there is no census to settle it. The historian Syed Asghar Mousavi, the same scholar who recorded the oral genealogies, has estimated that more than 60% of the Hazara population was killed. Other figures in the literature run lower, and some advocacy compilations run considerably higher. They cannot all be right. What is not in dispute is the direction people moved out. They went east over the mountains, and many of them stopped at Quetta in Balochistan. There are something like 900,000 Hazara there now. It is one of the largest Hazara communities anywhere outside Afghanistan, and it exists because of what happened in the 1890s. It has not been a refuge in any complete sense. A bombing at a Hazara rally in Quetta in September 2010 killed at least 73 people. The following September, gunmen stopped a bus of Hazara pilgrims near Mastang and killed 26. In May 2021, a bomb outside a school in the Hazara district of West Kabul killed at least 90, most of them schoolgirls. The samples exist because the people were driven somewhere they could be counted. The 2003 study read a few dozen markers along the Y chromosome. It was excellent work with the tools of its moment. But those markers are a sketch of a chromosome, not a reading of one. 15 years later, the team went back with whole genome sequencing and read the thing properly. 34 complete Y chromosomes, all of them carrying the star cluster, sequenced end to end so that every accumulated difference between them could be counted rather than estimated. The lineage came back older, much older. Their date for the common ancestor of the star cluster was around 2,576 years ago, with a confidence range running from roughly 1975 to 3,178 years. Genghis Khan died in 1227. That is about 800 years ago. The lineage is older than the man it was named after by more than a millennium. The authors were direct about what that meant. Direct evidence of an association between this lineage and Genghis Khan, they wrote, has yet to be discovered. Their reading is that it is not one man's reproductive legacy at all, but a founder lineage of Mongolic-speaking peoples in general, traceable to an ancient clan or simply to ordinary Mongol tribes expanding over a much longer stretch of time than a single conqueror's lifetime allows. Later work has complicated it further rather than settling it. Ancient DNA recovered from elite burials of the Golden Horde does carry this haplogroup. The lineage was genuinely there among Mongol rulers. But the study reporting it stopped short of connecting the haplogroup to Genghis Khan's genealogical heirs specifically. So the position today is not that the Mongol story was wrong. The Mongol connection is real and it is measurable. The position is narrower and stranger than that. This is a Mongolic founder lineage. It was carried by Mongol elites, and there is no evidence tying it to Genghis Khan, the individual. The bloodline was named for about 15 years. Then the name came off, and it went back to being what it was when it was found. Something enormous happened. We do not know whose it was, none of which settles where the Hazara came from, and that question has never had one answer, including among the Hazara. Encyclopedia Iranica records 3 accounts circulating within the community itself, that they are of Mongolian or Turco-Mongolian descent, that they are indigenous to these highlands and were here before the Mongols, or that they are a mixture, the product of several waves arriving on top of a population already in place. The scholarship has run along the same fault line for 70 years. Elizabeth Bacon, working from fieldwork among the Hazara in the late 1930s, argued for descent from Chagatai Mongols arriving in successive waves out of Transoxania. Notably, she pointed out that the Tidy story, a garrison left behind by Genghis Khan himself, does not appear in the primary Mongol chronicles at all. Her evidence was linguistic, and it cut against a simple origin. Hazaragi carries more Turkic loanwords than Mongol ones, which is not what a single Mongol garrison would leave behind. Against her, in 1962, the anthropologist Franz Schurman rejected direct Mongol descent outright. His account has the Nikudari Mongols, a breakaway force sent to raid the eastern Ilkhanate around 1262, which turned into something closer to bandit bands, settling among a population that was already there and already speaking an Iranian language. On that reading, the Hazara are not a transplant. They are what happened when the newcomers and the residents became one people. And the residents are the part we know least about. The valley at Bamiyan held two colossal Buddhas, 38 and 55 meters tall, cut as reliefs directly into the sandstone cliff. Radiocarbon dating of the organic material in them puts the smaller at roughly 544 to 595 and the larger at 591 to 644. Around 50 caves in the cliffs behind them were painted with scenes from the life of the Buddha. That was 600 years before any Mongol reached these mountains. A large, wealthy, settled population was living in the Hazara, and it left the biggest standing sculptures in the ancient Buddhist world behind as proof. Some Hazara hold that those people were their ancestors. It is a serious claim, and it deserves to be stated plainly along with its limit. No genetic study has ever tested it. There is no ancient DNA from that valley to test it with. It is an argument from continuity and from place, and it has never been given the chance to be either confirmed or killed. What the genetics can say is that nobody in this dispute gets a clean win. The measurable answer is mixture. One survey of 468 Hazara samples from Afghanistan and Pakistan put Mongolian-related ancestry at around 58%, with the remainder tracing to older local sources, Bronze Age steppe populations and Neolithic Iranian farmers. Both things are true at once. Something arrived and something was already here. The Buddhas are gone, incidentally. The Taliban destroyed them over about 4 weeks in March 2001. Artillery first, which failed against rock, then mines at the base of the niches, then explosives lowered on ropes into holes drilled in the statues. Over 80% of the surviving murals were destroyed or looted afterward. The evidence that might have answered the question was being blown out of the cliff while the question was still open. There is one more asymmetry in the data, and it is the one that turns this from a story about conquest into a story about people. The Y chromosome passes father to son. Mitochondrial DNA passes mother to child. Read separately, they record the male and female halves of a population's ancestry independently. And for the Hazara, the two halves do not match. The male line leans heavily east. That is the star cluster and the broader Mongolic signal underneath it. The female line does not. A survey of Hazara mitochondrial DNA found Eastern Eurasian maternal lineages at about 35%. High and striking, because as the authors noted, those lineages are virtually absent from the populations bordering them. But 35% is not the Y chromosome's picture. Roughly 2/3 of Hazara maternal ancestry traces west and local. That gap has a plain meaning. The men who brought this lineage into these mountains did not arrive with their family. They arrived and the women were already here. It is the signature of an incoming, largely male group settling into a resident population, and it is the most common admixture pattern in human history, which does not make it gentle. But it does mean that the Hazara are not a Mongol army preserved in a valley. Half of what they are never went anywhere. It was in the Hazarajat when the horsemen came over the passes and it stayed. Which raises the obvious question about the other thing they carry, because the language went the other way entirely. Hazaragi is not Mongolic, and it is not Turkic. It is Persian, an Eastern variety of Dari, an Indo-European language holding on to some archaic sounds and a handful of retroflex consonants picked up from its neighbors. Roughly 1/10 of its vocabulary is Turco-Mongolic, and the words that survived are domestic ones. Berry, a bride. Alagha, the palm of a hand. Kulahe, a thief. From Turkic, Ata, father. Kara, black. Kata, big. 6 words are not a language. They are what is left of one. The shift to Persian appears to have completed toward the end of the 18th century. How it happened is not established. Assimilation, intermarriage, the pressure of living inside a Persian-speaking administration. Nobody has isolated the mechanism, and it would be easy and wrong to pretend otherwise. But the language they gave up did not vanish everywhere at once. In two villages in Herat province, Kundur and Kariz-i-Mulla, a separate Mongolic language called Moghol was still being spoken into living memory. The German Mongolist Michael Weyers went and documented it in the 1970s and found it already dying. A handful of active speakers, most of them past 40, most of the rest able to understand it but not speak it. Ethnologue now lists it as dormant. Whether anyone still speaks it is unknown. That is the whole shape of the problem in one image. A few valleys away from the Hazarayat, the language that would have answered a lot of these questions was going quiet while somebody wrote down what he could. And that is where it stands. Every genetic claim about who the Hazara are rests on DNA taken from people who are alive right now, including the whole genome work that took Genghis Khan's name back off the lineage. All of it living donors. No ancient DNA has ever been recovered and published from the Hazarajat itself. Nobody has dug there. The Buddhas are rubble, the murals are looted, the Mongolic language of the region is dormant or gone, and the graves that could settle a 150-year argument have never been opened. So the only archive left is the people themselves. It always was. When the geneticists needed a name for the most explosive male lineage ever found in Asia, they did not get it from a tomb or a chronicle or a king list. They got it from Hazara families who had kept track of who they came from out loud across 8 centuries of being told they were nobody. That name has since come off because the science got better and the date no longer fits. It may go back on. It may be replaced by someone whose name we have not learned yet. But the record they kept was real, and it was the only one anybody had. The Hazara have been carrying the evidence in their bodies the entire time, and for 15 years theirs was the only testimony strong enough to put a name to it.